Hi, everyone. My name is Tracy Bryant Riches, and I've been contracted by Limestone Charter Association to help them start their authorizing office. Part of that is going through the new application cycle that begins basically now. I hope that if you're watching this, you're considering writing an application. And one of the things I'm going to try to do through these webinars over the course of the next 4 months is walk through the process with you to give you some advice, talk about what our expectations are going to be. Anything that possibly you can ask, please ask. Send me an email, join my live meetings, which will start on September 14th. Anything, let me know. I'm here to help. So we're going to get started and go through the application. I'm going to show you a few places on the on the State Department's website you need to visit. And then we're going to go through that application to get started. All right. As you do this, understand, and I want to be clear on this. This is a huge undertaking, huge. It is a lot of work to start a school. And right now, this is going to seem completely overwhelming when we're talking about writing this application, because this is not like a 25 pager. It's huge, right? And then the bigger picture is that this is the easy part, really opening the school, finding a place to open a school, recruiting kids, finding money to open your school for the facility. All of that is really the hard part, but it all starts here, and it all starts with your ideas. And so that's why we're going to go through the application throughout these 4 months, and I'm going to try to walk with you as you should be writing. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to share my screen here just quickly here and see if I can make that work. Take me just a second. Okay, here's sharing my screen, and here we go. I'm sorry if you can hear my dog barking at the door. She wants in, but she's not getting in. Okay, so again, welcome to the Limestone Charter Association Charter Application Review. And this is the first part. We'll be having these meetings every other Tuesday until end of November. At that point, you should almost have your application written and spend the last December and January really putting finishing touches on it. Okay, so right now the application is not out on the website yet at the SCDE. And maybe before we get to this, let me just go here, and I'm going to stop sharing this and go to the website so you know where to go if you've not already done this. So here is the application. In order to find that application, you will go to the State Department of Education's website. Let me share this with you here so you can see that. Okay. All right. A couple of things that are on here that are really, really important for you to look at, even before you really start thinking about writing this application, because this part is really finding your resources to write this application. So when you go to the State Department of Education's website, you go to districts and schools and go down to school choice, and you will see charter schools over here, and you will see charter school application information. So let's just pick charter schools, go to that website. There's several things on here about what a charter school is. It has some links for resources right here over here. On the right is the application. We get to this. Again, they have not updated this yet for the coming cycle, but the application will be basically the same with a few little changes. So go ahead and start on this one, because you should be writing and researching and thinking and putting down thoughts now. And then when they bring out the new one, you can look for the differences, but they'll be pretty minor for the most part, right? So the charter right here, you'll have a letter of intent, which we'll talk about, the application itself, and then some other documents that must go along with the application or it will not be complete. And that is your signature and your assurances, your enrollment projection form, and to help you as you're writing is the actual evaluation rubric. Now, there are several choices for choosing your authorizer. So as a charter school, you're going to have a sponsor, an authorizer, and that is the group that tells you that you're approved and you're a school, or you're not approved, you need to come back next year with do some little work. Limestone Charter Association just began. This is our inaugural year, and you would be our first group. To give you a little background, have worked at one of the other authorizers, and I have written several applications, and I've opened 3 schools. So I've been there, done that, and have a lot of knowledge, and you learn by doing. I, at one time, was the director of new school development for the charter district a long time ago when it very first started. And then I left there and went and sat on the other side of the table. And that's where I really learned how to open a school. So it's a lot of work, but it's doable, and it's very rewarding once you get it done. So if you're thinking about doing this, here's the first place you start, and you pull down the application. Okay, for now, as you're putting together your thoughts right now about, oh, I want to have a school and what that's going to look like, you need to do some research about where you want to put your school. And the best place that you can start doing that, of looking at what the community need is, and before we really start talking about the application, I want to make sure you understand, fulfilling a community need is a large part of writing the application and becoming a school. You've got to do your research first before you can really sit down and say, I want to be this type of school or that type of school. You must be able to meet the community need. The easiest place to find those things are back to the Department of Education. Let's go here and look at data, right? So here's 2 things. First thing you can do is look at report cards. And as you know, every school has a report card, and they are measured based on many factors. And there's a lot of information. There's tests, there's how well the school did on EOCs or SC Ready. Those things that you will need as you're writing your application, and you will need when you're trying to decide what's the best fit for my community. And we're going to talk a lot about that in a minute, but here's where you find a lot of information. But the report card is kind of a big picture, right? And you're going to need to do a lot more research than that in order for you to prove that you really know your community. You really know your community. So the next place you could go is that you could FOIA the State Department of Education for deeper information. So let's say you would like to know how many students with an IEP are in a particular area. So you might pick 2 or 3 schools that you're going to pull from, because you know that you're going to get a portion of those kids. So how many are actually out there? So you can be estimating how many you might get. So those kind of information is not going to be found on the report card to the extent that you can actually figure any of that information out. You may FOIA the State Department of Ed through this portal called the Research Data for Your Records menu. You create an account, and then you go in and you make your request. They will look at it. They will see if it's something they can give you based on the law of what's FOIAble and what's not. And then they will let you know if you can have that information. It's typically electronic. It doesn't really cost anything. But that's really good information. What that tells me too is that you've really done a lot more research. The other place you can go to start researching your area is actually, I suggest, the Annie E. Casey Foundation. This is a national organization that looks at student counts, at kids count. And there's just a ton of information here. And so I like to see, as you can see, it says it's the state trends in child well-being. It will tell you so much about how many children are in poverty, how many come from single parent homes, how many come from a family where there is no one who's ever been to college or first generation, how many of them do. All that information is really good information that you should be looking at before you sit down to write anything other than some random thoughts about what kind of school you'd like to have. So start looking at that. That'll give you some ideas as you go along. It's a process. No one sits down and says, this is exactly what I want to do, and I want to write it down. You might start that way thinking that. It never ends up that way. It's really very much of a process of trying to figure out what the community need and the educational program you're trying to create. So All you need to do is do your research, and here's a really good place to do that. The other place that you can go, and it's easier to Google than anything, right? Is if you go and let me go to Google and show you, you want to do SC student head counts, okay? What that will bring you to, active student head counts. It will bring you to this page. I always have to Google it. It's just harder to find for whatever reason for me. So what this does in this page right here, it will literally tell you per school how many kids by race, by gender, how many kids with IEPs, how many ESOL. There's lots of information this will give you, particularly when you're trying to break it down by schools. Whereas the report card will give you the overall kind of, when you really need to get down to the nitty gritty and do your research, here's a great place to look. So I expect in your process, you need to start looking at, I want to do a school in, I live in Richland, we'll just say Richland County. Well, where in Richland County, right? So you go start looking at this research and it'll give you a really good idea of what kind of need is out there. All right, so let's go back to the PowerPoint now. So let me stop sharing and go back to my PowerPoint. All right, and start with there. Okay, so once you've kind of done that, download the application, give it a look, okay? And so it starts out with this. Here's each section of the application. It's been like this for many, many, many years, not a lot of change, but I'm gonna go through some things here as much as I can get done in an hour, because I keep saying this, we're gonna keep these to an hour. All right, so, all right, let me see, make that go. Okay, it doesn't like me, hold on a second. Okay, there we go. All right, the first thing you have to do when starting this process before you turn in your application is you're required to send in a letter of intent. And this is because the authorizer truly needs to know what to be prepared for, because they have to hire readers. They need to mobilize their staff to know how many applications they're going to be looking at. And so just because you turn in a letter of intent does not mean you absolutely have to turn in an application. It doesn't, but it just helps the authorizers. You must turn this in 90 days prior to the application being due, which is February 1st. If you do not turn in the LOI, then you don't get to turn in an application. And you also must turn it in to the State Department and whatever authorizer you are submitting an application to. As it is right now, an application can be turned into multiple authorizers because it does not say in the law that you can only submit to one authorizer. The situation is right now is that you can only be approved by one authorizer. So whoever approves you first, you're done, that's it. You can't pick and choose. You can turn into all of them, including the 3 state ones, which is Limestone, the Charter School District, and the Institute of Erskine. And your local district is also an authorizer. But once you get approved by one, that's it. You don't get to go be approved by another one and then get to decide which one you want. Right? Okay, so the SED will have a form stack. It's not up yet, so I can't link that. But I do have this link there for you if you want to go back to that off the website. Also, make sure that you do read the directions on the State Department's website in the event they change them between now and the time you have to turn it in. Don't rely solely on this video because they can make some changes between now and then. All right. And if you are planning on submitting to more than one authorizer, you must submit an LOI to each authorizer and the State Department of Ed. I encourage you to send an LOI to everyone until you get some time to get to know each authorizer. Okay, the application is due by 5 at February 1. And so you would be opening in the 23-24 school year. So you're going to turn in, oh, I have a typo right there. That's supposed to be 22. So hear me, that's supposed to be 22. You will turn in on February 22. You will know because they'll have 90 days to approve you or not approve you. If you are approved, You will not open that fall, but the next fall. And that might seem like a long time to you, but once you get started trying to get this school open and get your building, it is not, trust me. All right, you cannot be late or you're done. And then you're done for a whole year. I know that's hard, but that's just how it is. And you must submit through the online portal. I am going to ask the state if there's any, I guess, restriction on also sending me a Dropbox link. If they say, no, you can't do that, then I will take that off. But right now, they are having a changeover of employees. And so I've not been able to verify that yet, but I'm hoping to be able to also have a Dropbox link. It's just because it's easier. State timelines, and this is true no matter who you turn into, everybody's got 90 days. So from February 1, you've got basically February, March, and the end of April, and you will know whether or not you are approved. So then you've got May, June, that you're going to be writing, if you get approved, your planning and implementation grant that we'll talk about later in these meetings. And then, then you got to be on it. You got to be working to get that school open, particularly looking for that building. Okay. If an applicant is denied and wants to appeal, then the applicant has to take it to the administrative law court. Now that is a huge jump. It really is, because a lot of authorizing an application is about how you present yourself as being a high capacity group. So there's lots of things that go along with getting approved. It's not just, oh, there's a right answer and a wrong answer. It's not like that at all. So understand, if you don't get approved, there's probably a good reason, and you'll clearly understand that if you come with Limestone as to why you didn't get approved. I will tell you this, and I hope you hear this. Until February 1st, I am your friend. You can call me, you can email me, you can text me, whatever. I will do a Zoom with your group if you want me to. As you are writing, I cannot tell you if something's right or wrong or good or bad, but I can give you some thoughts and feedback about it to help you understand what the expectations of what you're writing is. And so I'm your friend, and you should use me as the resource that I am. When February 1 comes though, and the applications are turned in, then I'm no longer a friend. I am the authorizer who is trying to decide whether or not the group as a whole chooses to recommend you to the association's board for approval or not, based on these things that we just don't feel that you're really ready to open this school, right? Again, I'm going to tell you, this is a ton of work. There's a lot of research here. There's a lot of writing here. It's a process. It's not a sit down and get it done in a weekend thing. It is a 4-5 month process that you can't just do it all at one time. And I will tell you that it is perfectly okay to look at other charters. They're public documents. You can FOIA those too if you want to. But I don't want to see my own writing back at me. So if you take someone's writing, because there are some things that are just, it is what it is. It's a compliance driven issue thing. That does not mean you can just take some other charter and just copy it. So I don't want to see my writing back at me for all the things that I have out there that I've written, but you've got to take it and incorporate it into your own application as you and your voice, not my voice. Okay. So the application packet includes the application questions. It will give you some background into why those questions are being asked. Then it will give you the question, and that is your narrative. It'll have a cover page, the assurances, and the certification page. If you don't do those, your application might be awesome, but if you didn't do that, you are not getting approved. It's that important. You must make sure everything is in the application that's asked for. You'll do a student enrollment projection that just gives everybody an idea of how many kids you're going to have over the years, because that's a money issue. The state board regulations are in there. The facility approval process is in there. The facility notification form, which may or may not be applicable because you may or may not already know what your building is. And the virtual school curriculum review and online course. If you are planning to be a virtual school, you must do that portion. If you're not going to be a virtual school, then you do not. If you're going to be a blended school or you're taking a curriculum that is already put together and you're blending it together with students who actually come to your building, but they're online, you will probably need to do that portion depending on what that looks like. If you're a school and you're just doing, you're going to use Edmentum for something, or Ingenuity, or any of the others, that is not you being a virtual school. That is you just using another medium to teach your instruction at this level, not this level. Okay. The charter school law, while the regs are, you need to read this. I need to see that you have read this and that you are using it as part of why you're justifying what you're doing. So again, I don't need you to quote the law to me, but I need you to understand the spirit of that law and why what you're doing is legal under the Charter School Act. And I have linked it there. So if you come back to this PowerPoint that will be on Limestone's Charter Association's website, you can get there. Okay, so everybody gets into this. And the reason I talk about this early is because it's like, oh, we need a name. What are we going to call our school? What are we going to call our school? Don't name it yet. Just find a working title if you want to call it our school until you get to a point where you really understand what your school is. Don't get stuck on this, but I know schools get stuck on this all the time. First off, be unique. When somebody says your name, it should not be confused with any other name. Don't come up with a name right now and we're stuck with that. That's it. Let that name evolve because it will change as you go through the process of writing this application. I promise you it will. Remember that you're marketing the name, not the abbreviation. So when you're out there marketing and because you should be recruiting kids now, because you've got to show in your application that there is enough interest in your community to fill the school, you need to come up with a name that one, people remember, and two, that's unique and not like everybody else, but you can market that name, right? Consider your short name, not just your abbreviation. So if your name's really, really long, everybody's going to shorten it automatically. So you need to be thinking of ways they can shorten it. Make sure it's not a word you would prefer not be associated with your school. Okay. Also, make sure your abbreviation does not match your current school in the district. So if you're OCA or LCA or ELA or CLA, all those are abbreviations to schools. So the reason that that's important for you to know what the abbreviations are in the district to which you want to be in the association or the institute or whatever you're going to choose, so that when people are referring to your school, if they refer to you in that abbreviation, they're not confused with another school. So you do not want that to happen. Be unique. Don't get stuck on a name now. Let it evolve. All right, let me tell you what to not tell your school. The first off is do not name your school after a person. Living or dead, don't do it. And please don't name it after yourself. That is just too egotistical, okay? I understand a lot of PhDs and they want to start the Dr. It's Mine school. Don't do that. All it takes is one bad publicity for a teacher that did something silly or anything accusation, and your name is all over the place. That's not what you want. I'll give you a perfect example. Colin Powell had a school named after him. That school got closed. Whether it was academics or money, it was just a shut down charter school. And so here, one of the most celebrated African-American generals of our time had a school named after him that got closed. That is not what you want to happen. So please don't name it after a person. Don't name it after a city, really. That's just kind of not unique, right? More than 4 words, it's going to get shortened. So keep it simple. Please have no religious connotations to it. As you know, you're a public school. So please don't do that. Don't use SC or Midlands, Low Country, Palmetto. They're all overused already. Again, they're not unique. Be careful. Don't name it acronyms. Be careful with acronyms. Don't name it something that's difficult to pronounce, and don't name it something that somebody has to go look it up in the dictionary to know what that is. That doesn't sit well with the publican community. Okay, be careful. That's what I'm saying. Don't get stuck on a name because you get completely like, oh, that's our name. That's our name. We can't change our name. You know, when you also, the other thing I will say here too, if you're doing a high school, don't name it like Second Chance. Nobody wants to send their school kid to Second Chance or something like that. When you're trying to do high risk kids, don't name it something that the kids are going to say, wait, I don't want to go to that school because of the name of it, right? Unique, not a place, not a person. Okay, a charter school is a public school, and it is a school of choice. And those are two huge things, and this is what I want to make a point about. When you talk about charter schools, please do not say charter schools and public schools. Charter schools are public schools, okay? And so that tells me you don't truly understand what a charter school is, and you don't truly understand the charter school community if you're calling it a charter school and a public school as if those are two different things. They're not. The verbiage there is a charter school and a traditional school. Now, when you talk about being a school of choice, that means that parents have the choice to go to your school, take their kid to your school, or not. And every dollar you get is based on kids and seats, right? And so you are a school of choice, and you need to understand that those parents, those are your clients, those students, those are your customers. And if they're not happy, they leave. And if you don't replace that student, then you lose money. So being a school of choice is great in the fact that there's some flexibility, but it also means that you got to work really hard to fill your school. You're an autonomous educational entity that is relieved of many state laws for increased accountability. Now, let's talk about what does autonomous mean. It does not mean that you are going to be able to do everything on your own with no support and no help and just be an island to yourself. No school is an island to themselves at all. What autonomous means is that you make the decision. Your board creates their own policies. They may have to follow some guidelines. It's based on some federal laws or state laws they're not relieved of responsibility for, but you still pass those policies, not the authorizer. That's not who passes policy. The authorizer is here to support your decisions and help you if you need help and you ask for help, or point things out that you're not doing right, but say to you, okay, you're an autonomous school and we've seen some things that there's some issues here. So tell us how we help you. And if you refuse to do anything about it, then we have to become oversight. And then we have to do something about that. But it's not our point or purpose. It's not our mission to be your overlord. It's our point to be your sponsor. And when we sponsor things, we help it grow, right? But at the same time, we do have to wear this other glove, just like we're wearing the support glove. We also have to wear the monitoring glove and the oversight. But autonomy means you make the decision. We will support your decision and help you if you ask us for that, but we still must oversee that in a way that is best for your school. So an educational entity that offers innovative and unique opportunities for school. If you're a charter school and you look just like the traditional school and you write me a charter that says, hey, we're going to just do what they do down there, it's just that we want to be over here, you're not getting approved. You have to use something that's innovative and unique. You're not just a regular community school. You have to tell us what's missing in that community that you're going to feel as a charter school. So you're going to get a lot of parents who come to you because they're not satisfied with the educational system in their community. They might be, you'll see a lot of special ed children in the beginning because parents think, I'm not happy with the school over special ed and I'll go over here, it'll be different. Well, it's not when it comes to those kind of things. You might be having a different program and they might be happy with that program, but your services, your responsibilities to that special education child and their IEP does not change because it's a charter school. So when you're writing the application, those are things you have to keep in mind. There are the uniqueness that you need to come up with, but there's the recognition of the things that you must do, like all public schools. All right. Okay, let's keep going. Here's what you're not. You're not a private school. You cannot charge tuition. You may charge the same fees that the local district charges, but you cannot charge tuition. You are not an elitist school. You cannot have selective admissions. That means that I can make you take a test, or you have to be in a certain money thing, or you get in line and you just sign up and you get on the waiting list forever and ever, never. You're not that. You're a charter school. You're a public school. So you must follow the rules of the lottery to accept children. You are not a John Doe and Sons, meaning that you're not a family business. When we start to see a lot of the same family work in the school, it makes the authorizer nervous because it becomes a family business, and it is hard to have good separation of duties when you're family at working at the same place, right? You are not a business solely created to provide a job for someone. So someone's thinking, oh, I'm gonna start a school because I don't like working in traditional, so I'll just start a school for myself. That's not what you are. You're serving a community need, not a need for you to have a different job or maybe a better job. You're not a magnet school, so you cannot have admission requirements such as being good at math or being a high reader or being gifted and talented. You can be what's called an education alternative education campus, and that in that you can have a priority lottery, but that is not the same thing as being like a magnet school where you can give them a test to get in, or an elitist school or anything like that. And we'll talk more about lotteries and different types of schools as we get into some of the later sessions. Okay, what you are is you are feeling a need in the community. You have to figure out, based on the research you're doing, probably the things I give you from the website and other things in your area, is what is the need in your community. So some of these are examples, not exhaustive. I'm sure you can come up with some more, just the ones I did. There might be failing schools in your community. If you are on the 95 corridor, commonly called the corridor shame, you'll probably find a lot of that. And we welcome you to try to start a charter school there. It's been difficult to start schools in rural places just because of the number of kids and what the number of kids you really have to be financially successful. So that's been really hard, but we're always open to rural schools. Somebody out there where it's really difficult to find resources, it's tough, but those are where charter schools are really needed as well. There could be a lack of programs. So it's not that the district where you live or the schools where you live are bad schools. They're not failing schools. They're pretty good schools, but they all offer exactly the same thing and nothing's unique. And so you might find that you're trying to add an extra bonus that, okay, the kids can get a great education, but it's here in the charter school because we're going to offer this unique program as part of our education. It's going to be here. Language immersion schools are the first ones that I always use because I live in Richland County. My child, I'm a charter school parent. My child goes to East Point Academy. I drive all the way on the other side of town to take my child to school because while the school's straight down the street from me, that's 5 minutes from my house, was a blue ribbon school at one time, very good school, but they don't offer anything that takes my child to the next level, such as East Point Academy does. So my child is in the 6th grade and she is fluent in Mandarin Chinese. Now, as you can imagine, the job opportunities when she gets out of college are going to be astronomical. And that's what a charter school does. It fills a need. It adds something not there before. Because East Point opened, there are several more schools that are around East Point that are the local school district, traditional schools that are starting to add these kind of programs because of the competition. Character Ed's pretty big, a leadership academy. You may not have any STEM schools. I caution you, you better truly know what that model is, what a STEM school really is. If you're going to write that, if you're going to say you're a project-based school, you better understand the difference between a project-based school and a project-oriented school. So those are things that you really have to do your research to figure out if that's a good fit for your community. So another example would be a high crime rate. If you have a high crime rate, you probably have a lot of kids who've been in DJJ, who are going to fit the category, the definition for having an alternative education campus. And that is in the law. If you're interested in that, that's a conversation we'll have later in these, but that is huge because obviously there's issues in that community, and maybe a charter school that's bringing in a new program would be a whole lot of help to taking the crime rate down. You could say only one school and the distance, time on the bus. So there are some schools, charter schools, that open because there's one school in the whole district. There's one high school in the whole district, and it's on the very end of the county. And if you live on this end of the county, you're on the bus like 50 minutes in the morning. And that's a long time for kids to be on the bus to go all the way to that one school. I'll give you an example of that, although not necessarily time on the bus, but just how one school situation, and this goes along with overcrowding as well, because if you have one school, you typically have an overcrowded school. When Oceanside Collegiate Academy opened in Mount Pleasant, the only school in that Mount Pleasant was Wando. Wando had 4,200 kids at that time. So instead of Charleston County breaking it up, opening more schools, having smaller, or even not even small, I mean, they have one now, it's got 1,200 kids. Oceanside really was able to come in, say, we're only gonna have 600 kids. And so now I think they're like 700, but Wando still has like almost 4,000 kids. So the overcrowding of one school, parents don't want to send their kids to a school that's got 4,000 kids. That's bigger than a lot of colleges in our state. Those are really good examples of fitting the need for all those parents that are just horrified about sending their kid to a school of 4,000 kids when they know they're going to get lost in the shuffle, and they're looking for that small school because they know their child will be successful there. That's a great reason to open a charter school. Okay, let's say, okay, it's time. You looked at this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. It has to be we. You cannot do this by yourself. It cannot be one or two people. You have to have a committee. And when you start forming this committee, you've got to look at the short and the long term. Okay, the short term is you're writing the application and you're trying to get to this point where the school is open. In the long term, that charter committee now falls into becoming the charter school board. When there is a school open and there are parents and there's employees that have the right to vote for the school board, then they become a school board and the charter committee is dissolved. But in the beginning, you just need a group of people that really want to get this done. You have to have one teacher. I will tell you, it's nice to have two teachers, one special ed and one general ed, if you can find that. That's usually a really good combination. You need somebody that's a banker, financial advisor. Some people say we like to have an attorney. I will tell you that's not required by any means. You need parents that really want to do the work and get out there and recruit. They may not want to be your decision makers on your group, but they just want to get out there and make this happen for their kid. So you really need to take that committee and kind of break them into two groups. You do the worker bees, the ones that go out and do your recruiting events, the ones that are on the telephone calling people, the ones that are handing out flyers everywhere, your worker bees. And then you have the people that are really making your decisions. You need people on your committee that have resources, and I don't mean money. I mean, have friends they can call and pick up the phone and make things happen. Maybe they work for city government, so they have an in there. People that have experience at charter schools, any of those things that give you a broad base of understanding. You know, those two teachers are absolute and everybody else is as you decide. But understanding this, it's really, really, really important to find at least 6 to 7 very dedicated people, because 1 or 2 people will burn out before they get this school open. 6 or 7, that committee forms, They work through the process of writing the application. Typically, I will tell you not all those people write, but they're reading, they're editing, they're finding resources, and they become the board before you get to the application time to turn it in. Do not apply for your nonprofit status. Please do not do that. Because once you do that, you now are a board of a nonprofit. What you really want to do is keep it very grassroots until it's time to form your nonprofit right before you turn your application in, which is in February 1. So in about around January, it takes maybe 20 minutes to go on the Secretary of State's website, fill out the application, turn it in, and they will stamp it, and now you're a nonprofit. Then you have to follow all the nonprofit laws. So you have to have open meetings, you have to have minutes, you have to have agendas, and there's a process to do that. If you get stuck in that process too early, you're losing that grassroots group just meeting, processing, because now you're going to have board meetings. And if you have too many of your committee people show up, and then that's your board, then that's a real board meeting. So please wait till the end. If you've already done it, you've done it. You just got to deal with that. But try not to do that. It takes 15, 20 minutes max. Keep it simple until you have to. Okay. Now, that's just some basic overviews. That was not a whole lot of information. I'm just trying to keep it to an hour. I'm going to be doing these pretty much every other Tuesday until we get into November. And again, remember, I'm your friend. I will give you lots of advice. I suggest if you, I suggest you go FOIA some applications and read them. Not that you're trying to, get anybody's writing, but you need to read other applications to see where you stand. And they're public documents, so you can FOIA them from the State Department of Ed, where I showed you how to FOIA. Next time, we're going to talk about community need in the educational program. So between now and when you watch this and the next meeting, start doing that research to try to find out what is the socioeconomic status of your community. What is the crime rate in your community? Do that research so you can be starting to think of, how do I take this need and match it with an educational program? And then we're going to get into next time talking about whether or not you really want to work with if you want to work with an education management organization, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing, it's not better one way or the other. And we'll talk more about that. Whether you want to be independent or work with an EMO and what that looks like, because they have some guidelines you'd have to follow that would not give you as much flexibility as creating what you want to create. But at the same time, you got to find somebody who's got a proven record to do that. So lots of things to do. Download the application, be looking at it. It'll change, but it'll change very minor. Go ahead and start doing that research. And then when we get back together, please join my live session. And then you can ask questions. You may also go ahead and send me questions if you wish. My phone number and my email are on the website. So thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time.